Oh, good. All right. Welcome. Welcome to everyone who's here. If you would just let us know where you're from, we've got people from all around the country. So I myself am logged in from Waco, Texas. I've lived in Waco for about 10 years now. Prior to that, I lived in South Dakota for about 10 years and was in New Jersey before that and Los Angeles before that. So I've been all around the country. So let us know where you are from, and we're going to get started in just 1 minute. So delighted to have you with us here today. It's been a great summit so far, and we're hoping the rest of this day will be so meaningful and purposeful and inspirational to you. Ohio is where my dad is from. I lived the first 9 years of my life in Ohio. Wonderful. Lynn, what city are you from in Ohio? And a high school specialist, an intervention specialist. Wonderful. Welcome to you. Let us know for everybody who's logging in. We would love to know where you're from, where you're logging in from today. Springfield. I lived in Springfield. I actually went to Northwestern High School for 1 year. I don't know if you're familiar with that high school or even if it's still there. It was a long, are you kidding me, Lynn? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I went there for my 10th grade year, way back. That would have been, I'm not even sure that I want to say, 1986? Oh my gosh. Well, welcome. Welcome to everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started. We have just 50 minutes today to talk about school climate and how we can use data to drive improvement. You know, so often we talk about improving our school climate. In fact, I've been part of district improvement plans where school climate was on the menu and we talked about it and recognized that we were actually not measuring it. So from year to year, how would we know if it was getting better? So using data to drive improvement is such an important topic. So we're going to have a check-in question today. And our check-in question is, think back to the best school climate you have experienced as a student or as a staff member. In 2 to 3 words, how would you describe that school climate? I'm going to give you just a moment to think about that. Think back to the best school climate you have experienced, either as a student or as a staff member. In 2 to 3 words, how would you describe that school climate? Go ahead and put that into the chat box. We would love to hear what those words are. Engaging, challenging, fun, that comes up a lot. Positive, supportive, challenging. That word has also come up too. It's not that we don't want to be engaged. We do. We want to do hard work. Student-centered, fun, warm, excited to learn. Yes, this is the kind of thing that we're going for with our students. Fun and engaging. Thank you for sharing. Feedback, and trust. Both students and staff members need to have that feedback in order to learn and grow. And trust. Wonderful. We're going to refer back to some of these words as we go through today. So here's our agenda for the next 50 minutes. We are going to focus on school climate, on building a school identity, creating a positive learning environment, and developing school connectedness for all. And when we talk about school climate, to me, school climate and school connectedness just go hand in hand, right? A student that reports that they have a great school climate is also one that reports that they feel connected, they feel a part of it, they feel like it's a place that they belong. So we're going to talk about what systems, data in particular, and practices can help you get there. We're going to go through all 3 of these things: building a school identity, creating a positive learning environment, and developing school connectedness. And for each one of those, we're going to talk about what are some important data sources that you can collect and use to drive improvement for your campus or for your district. And then I'm going to offer you a few interventions that you can use for each one of those that I've seen be successful in my own experience. So let me introduce myself now that we're all here together in this space. My name is Trudy Bender. I am a teacher turned school psychologist turned district administrator. In my last role, I spent 8 years as the coordinator of behavior intervention for Waco Independent School District here in Waco, Texas. And then 4 months ago, I switched from that role to actually working for Branching Minds. And my Branching Minds claim to fame is that I actually used their platform for 4 years before coming to work for them. I loved it so much in my role at the district level. and saw what a difference it made for our teachers and for our MTSS practice. I now work for Branching Minds full time, and it's been an amazing, amazing journey for me. So I'm just delighted to have you here to welcome you on behalf of Branching Minds. And let's go ahead and dig right in and talk about school climate. So why focus on school climate? Well, I want to tell you that school climate is actually considered to be a national health issue. Did you know that the American Psychological Association and the Centers for Disease Control are tracking school climate, and they care about it? And here's why. We know that students who feel connected to their school and who report a positive school climate are less likely to engage in all kinds of risky behaviors, including violent behaviors. This can literally be a matter of life and death for our students, not just engaging in those activities, but also students who report that they feel connected to their school are more likely to show up and to graduate. It has an impact on their entire lives. They report higher test scores, better school attendance, and having better life outcomes overall. So the Centers for Disease Control, of all places, has put out recommendations and strategies to improve school climate and connectedness. Isn't that incredible that across the country we're recognizing that a school is a hub for our students to feel like they belong to something? It's a point of connection, and it can be a point of hope. You know, it's those students who don't have any connection to anyone or anything that's meaningful that are most at risk. And they don't just put themselves at risk, they can put other people at risk too. This is vital work that we find ways to make sure that every single student feels connected to their school community. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So what do we mean by school climate? Well, all you have to do is go back and look at that chat box that we just filled up when we're talking about school climate. We want to have places that are engaging, that are collaborative, that are warm, and that are fun. School climate really is the quality and the character of school life. It's that sense of safety, of engagement, of respect. And I especially want to draw your attention to the last two things that I've listed here. And that is that school climate should include students, families, and educators. They are all stakeholders in having a positive school climate. And we want each person to contribute to the operations and care of the school, including the students. How do you know that you really belong to something? They give you work to do. You feel like you're an important part of this community. And that's actually one of the interventions that we're going to be talking about later. So what influences school climate? I'm going to take a moment here and ask you again, if you would just interact in the chat box and say, what are some things that have a big influence in your experience on school climate? I'll give you just a second to start typing those in. What actually impacts or has an influence on school climate? Someone put in building relationships. Boy, that's going to be at the center of everything we talk about, right? Staff wellness and trust, support, having what you need to get the job done, teachers' attitude, leadership and connectivity. Yeah. Teacher happiness. Yeah. If your teachers are happy, right? Someone has said, if you don't feed the teachers, they'll eat the children. It's so true, isn't it? Our teachers need to have the resources to get the job done. Buy-in, belief, administrative support. Those are all huge influences on school climate. I'm going to share with you one important, if in fact, perhaps the greatest impact on school climate. And I'm going to do that by quoting our PBIS guru, Randy Sprick. So here is the quote. Let me see if I can get it to come in here. There we go. Whoops. Sorry about that. There we go. The daily collective behavior of every adult in the building is the single most influential thing on school climate. It's the staff behavior that creates the climate of the school. And a positive, welcoming, and inviting climate can and should be intentionally created and continuously maintained. I think that is absolutely true. And I would point you, one of the resources that we used is that Safe and Civil Schools has a resource just on this very topic, intentionally creating a positive school climate. And so many of the resources from Safe and Civil Schools are what we used in our district. And it's so important to actually put real tools, real interventions, real ideas that work, real data collection tools in the hands of our school leaders so that they can do this important work. So let's talk about school climate data. If you don't measure it, how will you know where to start and how will you know if it's getting better? We're going to talk about three different kinds of behavioral data that are often used by leadership teams. And the first one you're going to see is the most common. It's what we think of typically when we say, "Oh, we're going to look at our behavior data." We look at discipline data, right? We look at incidents, office referrals. Are the kids showing up? Are they showing up to class on time? All of those things. This is the most common source of data that we use. And it does reflect school environment, right? Kids with a positive school environment are more likely to show up for school. They're more likely to get to class on time, to have less behavior problems. That's all true. But this is all data that happens kind of after the fact, and it doesn't really help us measure whether we're doing the things or not that might lead to an improvement. Discipline data is just an outcome measure. So let's talk about a couple of other sources of data that might be useful to us. The next one is observation and evaluation data. And this is the most accurate data that we have. This is where we actually look at our environment and use a means of evaluating whether we're seeing what we want to see. This is going to include things like fidelity checks. It's going to include things like actually measuring whether there are positive or negative interactions taking place in our environments, not just the classroom, but in our common areas. Would you not agree that our hallways, our cafeterias, our playgrounds, all of those things have an impact on the school climate, not just what's happening in the classroom? And then also using a rubric of some kind to guide this. I'm going to recommend the tiered fidelity inventory. That's a tool that I'm very familiar with, but it's not the only tool that's available to you. There are some specific school climate rubrics. Whatever you use is fine. Just get yourself a rubric so that you have a map for the journey, so that you know step by step how you can make improvements. So we're going to talk about that. And then finally, this is a crucial one. We're going to talk about perception data. And that is doing some kind of direct assessment of asking our students, hey, is this a place that you want to be? Do you look forward to coming to school? Are you proud of your school? Is there an adult here at this school who knows you well? If we don't ask our students those direct questions, then how can we say whether we've really made the impact that we want to? This is kind of that thermometer that we heard about in the keynote this morning. And once you've collected that kind of survey data, you can then get focus group data that can really help you drill down to specifics. So for example, when we use school climate surveys in our district, we would disaggregate that data and look at different kinds of subgroups. For example, we looked at boys versus girls at the secondary level, and we asked them about whether or not they feel safe at school. And did you know that girls feel less safe than boys in school in almost every single area? In fact, in every area of the school, in our experience, except one. There was one area in which boys felt less safe than girls. Does anybody want to take a guess at what it was? Where do you think in the school that boys might feel less safe than girls? Jim, good guess. You're close. Locker room, bathroom. That was it. For our district, it was bathroom. Now, for your district, it might be a little bit different. But in our district, our boys overall reported feeling less safe in the restroom. And so what that gives you an opportunity to do then is to think, all right, we want to tackle this. If our girls are feeling unsafe in our hallways, in our parking lot, what can we do to improve that? So get together a focus group of girls and say, what's going on? What could we do to help you feel safer here? And the same for the boys in the restroom situation. Like, what do we need to do to directly tackle that problem? This gives us a method for actually systematically collecting that data and then doing something with that data. These are the three specific things we're going to talk about today because we've just got a little bit of time, right? But I want to hit three things really big. One is using some kind of inventory where you're measuring your practices. The second is we're going to talk about how do we measure classroom environment and common area environment. And then finally, I want to give you some tools for doing school climate surveys if you are not doing a survey already. So the first thing we're going to talk about, and this is just kind of overall. So before we really dig into that, building school identity, creating a positive learning environment, building school connection, before we get to those three things, I want to give you a bigger picture assessment that you can use to help you get a further along in that journey. So the first thing I wanted to introduce to you is the tiered fidelity inventory. There is a link. And by the way, these slides are available to you. They are attached below. You are welcome to take those. I actually shortened them up a little bit. So what you see in that slides might be more than what I have here, which is fine. No different material, but you are welcome to take that. And the links are all there. In fact, I consolidated all of the links on the very last slide so that you have easy access to them. But one of them is the tiered fidelity inventory. This is a freely available tool put out by the National PBIS organization. And they actually have a software platform where you can collect this data from year to year for your campus, or if you're at the district level, for all of your campuses. I used this tool for 5 years in a row, and I really think that it was one of the most impactful things that we did, because it gave us just some clear guidance. You can't fix everything at once, and it's really tough to say where, if you're not using something like this, what the very next step should be. And this gives you a lot of tools for that. And I'm telling you, when you're implementing PBIS, that has a direct impact. Many of the questions in the TFI are directly related to measuring school climate. And so this is a tool I wanted you to be aware of. And in fact, I don't know if you're able to see this. I don't know if it's big enough for you to see it, but I thought I'd put up, I'm not saying what campus this is, but this is real campus data. It's actually a secondary campus. It's real campus data over the course of 4 years. And you can see, it's up and down. A 0 means we're not doing this practice. 1 means we're doing it, but it's not very formal. We haven't written it down. And a 2 means we're doing it and it's a formal process, like it's become a part of our system. And so you can see the progress that this campus made over time. And so what I wondered is, if you could look at this data, if you can see it well enough, what might be the next thing that this campus would want to tackle? So if you look at the very last row of data there, they've got a team now. Number 1 is, do you have a team? Number 2 is, are the right people on the team and are you meeting? Number 3 is, do you have clear behavior expectations? Number 4 is, have you taught them to your students? So if you go down, you can see, anybody want to take a guess? What do you think, if you were going to recommend this school to tackle something next, what might you think that they should tackle? You can just put in the number of the rubric. Anybody want to take a stab at it? What do you think? Maybe you can't read it well enough. Maybe it's too small. All right. Somebody said, Penny Graber said, 6 and 8. Yeah, 6 and 8. 6 is discipline policies. Are your policies proactive, instructive, restorative? 8, classroom procedures. Do your teachers have what they need for classroom management? Yeah, this led to great conversation. And I can tell you, in fact, what they chose is number 8, classroom procedures. They felt like until we get our teachers more professional development and coaching and managing their classrooms, we're not going to get anywhere. And then they also did take a look at their discipline policies too. So rather than trying to fix all of these things each year, they tried to get better at 2 or 3, get that one done, move right away to the next one. It's so very helpful. So I just highly recommend that you get some kind of rubric or roadmap for improving your positive behavior practice and your school climate practice. All right, building a school identity. When we're talking about school climate, a big part of that is feeling like you are a member of a special group, right? You have some kind of identity that sets you apart from everywhere else. Part of building a school identity is that you have a common language, you have traditions, you have rituals, you have ways of doing things as a school that make you feel like this is your place and you belong here. And there are some really specific and research-based ways that schools have done this. We know that they work. They've worked at schools all across the country, and I want to share a few of those with you. The first one is having some kind of specific school values and guidelines. Penny said in the chat box, school family or school community, feeling like you're a part of this group and that you have an important part to play. So having school values or guidelines is like front door easy first thing that you can kind of start putting into place. And the really common ones that you might see are like be safe, be respectful, be responsible. Those are really, really common. But what the idea behind this is that you are communicating your values to your entire school community. This is the kind of person that we want to be. These are the kinds of students that we want to produce. We want our students to be a certain kind of person or to have certain kinds of qualities that define us. These can be really fun. They can be memorable. There shouldn't be maybe more than 3 to 5, although I've had campuses do more than that and be very successful with it, as long as they really become a part of the fabric of your school. So I have 2 examples here. One is from an elementary school. Be a Bronco, be safe, respectful, and responsible. Brittany just posted, be a star, safe, timely, active learner, responsible, and respectful. Those are great. This one here is from a middle school, the Texans, and they have true grit. And grit stands for generosity, respect, integrity, and teamwork. And you can see that that poster that they have there is actually from the hallway, and they have posters like this in every area of the school where they've applied those values to whatever space that they might be in. So in the hallway, what does it mean to be generous? What does it mean to be respectful? What does it mean to have integrity? And what does teamwork mean in this space? So it's a really great way to build community and to have a common language, both for praising students and for praising students and also for providing correction. So rather than all different kinds of corrections offered all day, you can say, hey, you're a Bronco. Broncos are respectful. We're respectful to our other students and we're respectful to our teachers. So part of being a part of our school is being respectful. And then you can talk about what being respectful means rather than all kinds of different things. It gives you a place to bring back, to bring it right back to that common language that the kid's familiar with. He's probably been saying it every day. At least I hope he has been. And then how do we know that those values are real and that they've sunk in? And here's that data collection piece. You've got to have data to know whether it's working or not. So the TFI provides a tool for you, a walkthrough tool that asks you to go around and survey up to 20 random teachers and up to 20 random students. And you ask them, hey, what does it mean to be a Bronco? Can they answer it or not? If you walk around and your teachers can't tell you what that means, even though they might have heard it on the announcements, true story, every single day, but nobody still knows what it is, or it's posted everywhere, but nobody knows what it is, that's because it hasn't become a part of the way they do business in that school. You'll know that your school values have sunk in when you can walk around and ask any student, you can ask the person at the front desk, you can ask the paraprofessional, you can ask the teacher, and they all know what the school values are. And this gives you a way of actually measuring that. This rubric also asks whether or not there are positive acknowledgments for good behavior. So has a student who's been doing everything that they're supposed to do had any kind of acknowledgement, and are teachers being intentional about acknowledging positive behavior? So it's kind of a 2-for-1 in this walkthrough tool. Again, this data is really important because it's easy to sit in a circle at a meeting and say, hey, have our school guidelines sunk in? Do we know that they're working, that they've become a part of who we are? And everybody's like, yes, yes. And then you go out and walk the hallways and you find out, actually, no, not. So this was really helpful to us. And you can see that this campus here, this is an elementary campus where we did this walkthrough. They did great. All of their teachers and almost all of their students were able to list out their values, which were safe, respectful, and principled. And they called that the Mountain View Mustang Way. So that had become a part of their school culture. All right, let's talk a little bit about campus leadership. You cannot do something like this, any of this work that we're talking about today, without a leadership that's being intentional about this. So I wanted to just break right here at this point, and I stuck leadership in here, although it really applies to the whole thing, doesn't it? And that is that you need a team that's really guiding this work of building a more positive and supportive learning environment. So it's that team that's going to guide the whole campus, getting feedback, engaging that campus in an improvement cycle where you're going to set those school-wide behavior expectations. You're going to create lesson plans for them. You're going to make sure that they're applied in all of the common areas of the school. You're going to coordinate that teacher training and coaching and behavior support so that it's aligned all the way down through the school. And so it's that leadership team that's going to be using all of these different data sources, both making sure that they get collected and then making sure that they're used to actually improve your school climate. Observation data. So I just have shared with you there are different kinds of data. We've got that basic discipline data. We have that observation data that's the most accurate and authentic we can get. We just talked about that walkthrough tool. That's an observation tool. Here are a couple of more things that you might want to think about doing. A common area observation. This particular tool is from Safe and Civil Schools. There's another tool that's readily available right next to it to just check the fidelity of your Tier 2 check-in, check-out implementation. Many of you will be familiar with that intervention, which is so important for building school connection with students. If you're not doing some direct observation and fidelity checking, you have no idea whether or not what you say you're doing is actually happening the way that you want it to. So I encourage you, take a look at your observation data. What sources do you have? What sources might you need? And then how can you take the next step? Can't fix it all at once, but this is the kind of data that you need to say, all right, what's the very next step? So observation data. And I want to provide for you an example of a school that has done this really, really well. So when I agreed to do this presentation, or when I pitched it to Branching Minds, I was actually not yet working for Branching Minds. I was still a district administrator working, and I just thought, man, we have so many great examples of school campuses that are intentional about building school climate. And so I went ahead and I reached out to these principals. Of course, they're dear friends of mine. And I said, would you mind, could I just brag on your campus a little bit? So this is South Waco Elementary School, and they did some of that data collection that we talked about, and they recognized that their students did not know their values or guidelines for success. And the second thing is they had surveyed their students, and one of the questions that they asked was, are you proud of your school? And they had a much lower response to that question than they wanted to. So their campus leadership team for behavior, which they called the B Squad, the Behavior Squad, took a look at all of their practices, and they decided to pick one thing to improve, and that is they wanted to improve the percentage of students who said, I am proud of my school. So they changed their guidelines, you know, those values, those safe, respectful, responsible, they ditched that. They came up with a new one. It was called South Waco Spartan Pride. And P, proud of our school. Number 1, proud of our school. 2, ready to work. I can attitude. D, driven to succeed. E, everyone is important. So great, right? And they built a little rap chant that goes with it. Kids say it every single day in school, all across the school. They do it in their morning announcements. And it's just the energy that you can feel across the campus when all the kids are doing this together. It's fantastic. Then they also created a positive referral system where they recognized students for showing pride in their school, for being ready to work, for honoring each other as everyone is important, whatever it might be. They created a positive referral to really start reinforcing this. Guess what? When we went around the next year to say and ask students, hey, what does it mean to be a South Waco Spartan? What is Spartan Pride? They went into that chant. They could all tell us what it was. And I want to share this with you. The next year when they surveyed their students and asked, are you proud of your school? They had a 25-point jump in the number of students who said that they were proud of their school just from doing that. Think about that. Every day, the students were saying it. And of course, when you're saying it and you're acting like it, you start to believe it. They did a couple of other things too to really improve their school climate and connectedness. One is they started a group, and this was started by one of their paraprofessionals, wonderful, called South Waco, awesome guys. Again, building pride and being part of South Waco. So the swag group, South Waco, awesome guys. And then they had a girls code group as well that started meeting as leadership clubs. Some kids with behavior problems, some kids with leadership skills. So that was another thing they did. And then they also started engaging their students in meaningful work. Meaningful work means that a student is paired with a mentor on the campus, an adult, and helps them in some way. You can get really formal about it with job descriptions and postings, and you call it your supervisor. The kids get a special badge or a vest to wear. This is a really incredible intervention for building school connection. So effective. It's effective for kids who are struggling with behavior. But at South Waco, they had so many kids who, once they saw other students getting to do this, they all wanted to be a part of it. And so this was, you can see over here on the right, the very first South Waco job fair, where they posted jobs and students could come in and apply for those jobs. And it was just a really effective way of building school connection. So I want to suggest several of these interventions to you of building some guidelines for success that are memorable and meaningful, building a positive acknowledgement system that goes with them, leadership clubs that build on your students' strengths and build a sense of ownership in your school, and then meaningful work. These are all great interventions that can be used to help improve your school climate and connection. All right, I've been talking a lot, and I know that we don't have the ability to talk as much in interaction, but I just want to pause for a moment. I'm going to get a drink of water and just ask, are there any comments or questions that you have so far that I might be able to interact with before we tackle our last two things? If there are, could you just put them in the chat box, and I'll try to interact with those a little bit. Yeah, middle school. It's tough, right? It's really tough. And I'm going to share a middle school example with you. Now I'm trying to think, am I going to share a middle school example? What I can say to you about middle school is it's just so particularly important to have a great PBIS, a leadership team that is directing and guiding that work, and to get some student involvement in that. So the campuses I saw that were most successful really managed to integrate their student leadership to create like a student leadership group that worked together so that they felt like they had ownership in the work. We have some great examples of middle schools doing good work here. Yeah, and Brittany is providing some feedback there as well. They are not too old to engage in this. So yeah, wonderful question right there. All right, let's keep going. We're going to talk now about building a positive learning environment and the secret, the number one thing that you need to create a positive learning environment. So what is the number one factor in creating a positive learning environment? It's simple. It's so simple, but it's so challenging. I'm guessing that some of you already know what I'm going to say, and that is giving more attention to students who are behaving appropriately than to students who are behaving inappropriately. Like if you take one thing away from this, if you want to change the climate in your school and have an immediate impact, figure out some ways to give attention to students who are behaving appropriately more than to students behaving inappropriately. If your students have figured out that the number one way to be seen at your school is to misbehave, then you're going to have a lot of misbehavior. So I want to give you some ways. First of all, some data collection methods that you can see to improve this, and then some interventions that can actually improve this. And here is the magic ratio. Ratio of interactions, 3-to-1. If you want to have a learning environment that feels safe and supportive and positive, you need a ratio of at least 3-to-1 positive to negative interactions. And that doesn't just go for your students, that goes for your staff as well. You know, your staff are people too. They also like to be acknowledged for what they're doing well and recognized for their successes. At least 3-to-1. And you know, the research is coming out that 5-to-1 is better. And for kids who really, really struggle with school connection, like your toughest kid, I know you have a kid that just popped into your head right now. They need a ratio more like 10-to-1. I know that sounds so impossibly difficult to do, but what I can tell you as a teacher in my experience, that it is so much more fun to be a teacher who is focusing on the positive and being intentional about recognizing good behavior. Your classrooms will be more engaged, and you as a teacher will feel like your own bucket is getting filled up when you are engaging in this kind of instruction where the focus is not on who can I catch doing wrong, but who can I catch doing right. So, what are some of those reasons we give more attention to negative than to positive attention or positive behavior? Yeah, Safe and Civil Schools has done a lot here and offers some good interventions. Why is this so challenging to do? I mean, this is the number one thing we can do to build a positive learning environment. Why is it so challenging? What do you think? I'm going to let you go ahead and drop that in the chat box. Just think for yourself. Why is it? Why is it in our own families that we often are giving more attention to negative than to positive? It seems to be a feature of human personality that we want to focus on the negative. Yeah, human nature. I agree with you, Phil. Yeah, we expect good behavior. So why should we acknowledge it? We expect it. Yeah, negative is way more disruptive. So we often feel like we have to give attention to that negative. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. That's so true, Penny. Yeah, it's loud. And in some cases, it's dangerous. Yeah. Fascination with the abomination. You know, it's the dumpster fire that you just cannot look away, right? So I want to say that the behavior that you pay attention to is the behavior you will likely get more of. So you might have seen one of my cats wandering around behind me here while I'm presenting. If you annoy the humans, they will pay more attention. It's not just true of our cats. It's true of our colleagues. It's true of ourselves. It's also a part of human nature to seek out that attention. We want that feedback. And if the only way we can get it is through negative attention, then that's what we're going to do. Now, that being said, I want to be real clear here. In fact, I'm going to skip past that slide for just a moment to say the goal is not to eliminate correction. So please hear me here. I am not saying that you should not provide corrective feedback and that you should not address dangerous and disruptive behavior. You absolutely should. But it's that balance. When you are providing a correction to a student, when they are behaving in a way that's inappropriate and negative, just file it away in your mind that you now owe that student 3, 5, 10 positive interactions just to balance the scales back out if you want to have a supportive relationship with that student. And I know that you do want to have that relationship. So I want to just back up for a second here and talk about how can we actually measure this? We don't just want to imagine that it's happening or hope that it's happening. We want to know that it's happening. And I can tell you from personal experience that we overestimate how much attention we're giving to the kids who are behaving positively in our classrooms. So if I asked you right now to estimate your own ratio of interactions, might be an interesting exercise for you to think about. And then we actually sat there and took a measurement of it. More than likely, you are not giving as much attention to positive behavior as you thought that you were. So I want to provide this resource for you. It's super easy to do a ratio of interactions analysis on a classroom. In fact, when I did classroom walkthroughs or observations of any kind, even if I was there not because of classroom management, because of a specific student, I always took a ratio of interactions up in the corner. All you have to do is put a line down the page, positive on one, negative on the other. Every time the teacher provides positive attention to positive behavior, you put a tally. Every time there's attention to negative attention, you put a tally. At the end of 10 minutes, you get a ratio. How many positive to negative? And you're looking for that magic 3-to-1, at least 3-to-1. You can also do this in a common area of your school. Stand in the hallway and make it a collective observation. How many positive versus negative interactions are you hearing in your hallway? If that ratio is less than 3-to-1, you've got a negative environment going on in your hallway, and that is going to have a direct impact on those students going in, getting ready to learn. It's going to take that teacher extra time just to get those kids calmed down so that they're ready to learn, as opposed to hallways that are filled with greetings, positive interactions between teachers and students, between students and students. So I encourage you, measure this. If you don't have anyone who's coming into your room to measure it for you, you can always take a video of yourself. Boy, we hate that, don't we? I hate seeing a video of myself teaching. But if you take a 10-minute observation, just a video just on your phone of yourself teaching, and then count up your interactions. And I want to say, it's not just words that count. In fact, the older the student, like sometimes our middle and high school students, they don't want verbal acknowledgement in front of the whole class for their good behavior, but a smile and a nod, little tap on the desk and a thumbs up, a little note or an email, something like that, can be really, really powerful for some of those students who don't like public acknowledgement of their behavior. So this form has some ideas as well about some ways that you can start changing your own ratio of interactions and reminding yourself about it. And once again, I want to share a real life example with you of what this might look like. So this is real life data from a school. We actually collected this district wide. I took all of these and put them together so we could see as a district how we were doing. And I have to tell you, just measuring it makes an improvement because suddenly your attention is drawn to it. So this is one of those cases where the data collection itself can become an intervention for a campus that's really struggling with ratio of interactions. So I'll point you up here to the right-hand corner, which is December 2019. This was a campus, a smaller campus, an elementary campus, but a really challenging campus. And their behavior specialist took this on as kind of his personal his personal goal was to help the teachers and the staff members in his school create a more positive learning environment. So he started doing these observations in the classroom all the time. And so each bar you see there represents one classroom. Now, we don't know who the teacher was. He was able to present this data anonymously to his campus because no teacher knew what the other teacher's observation was. It was all done anonymously and in a very supportive environment, but they knew where they fell on this spectrum, right? And so the teachers that were down in the red, those are teachers in negative spending. So more negative interactions than positive interactions. The teachers in the yellow were kind of one-to-one, kind of equal. And then those teachers in the blue were those who were giving more attention to positive than to negative. That's kind of what we were going for. So he measured this. And then he went back in, met with each teacher, said, you know, what are your goals? How can I help you? And realized this was non-evaluative. This was purely peer-to-peer, colleague-to-colleague, talking about what they could do to make this better. So went back and measured it again in January and February, and lo and behold, what do you see? It has already gotten significantly better. Several more classrooms where there was a positive ratio of interactions. They did more work around this, paid attention to it. They assessed again in September, October of 2020. And what do you know? It had gotten to the point where about 2/3 of their teachers were now hitting it. And their average as a campus was a 5-to-1 ratio of positive interactions. So much to celebrate here. They could continue. And you can also see that, you know, that teacher in the red is looking around and thinking, you know, he or she knows that that's their data point. Nobody else does, but can say, boy, if they figured out how to do it, maybe I could figure out how to do it better. And we can provide support to that teacher by saying, hey, let's have you come in and observe another teacher. Or maybe that's a teacher who's really at risk. You know, you think about what it's like to be a student in those red classrooms versus those blue classrooms. It's not pleasant. Think about what it's like to be that teacher too. This is often a teacher who's getting down to the end of their rope. This is a great way to also see how your teachers are doing and which teachers might be, you know, at risk of saying, I might need to leave and get into a different profession, because it is miserable to be teaching in an atmosphere where you have a negative ratio of interactions. So I absolutely love this example. I'm so proud of their work here. And this campus was really proud of what they were doing. And they got that momentum behind them by actively collecting and using this data. And I just wanted to share one more a data point with you. This same campus also measured time on task. So it's a real easy method of going around and looking and seeing for 5 minutes what percentage of the students in the classroom were fully engaged in the learning task. That's what it's all about, right? And those students in the blue, classrooms in the blue, had 90% or higher students that were fully engaged. Yellow meant that they had between 80 and 90%. And then red meant that more than 20% of the students were not engaged. That means not a lot of learning is happening in that classroom. And so look what happened. As their ratio of interactions improved, the kids' time on task directly improved to the point where they went in and did it in September and October. And my goodness, they had made so much improvement in their time on task. One of the things that, because we did this as a district-wide initiative that came up, is that the teachers, when they knew they were being observed, they paid more attention to positive behavior. Like somehow these teachers are gaming the system. And my response to that is, fantastic. Like if they know how to do it and start doing it when you're in the room, they are going to get that feeling of, oh, wait a second, it's actually a lot more fun and my students are a lot more engaged when I'm paying attention to positive behavior. And we can build on that. So celebrate. If your teacher is able to do it when you're in the room, they're also able to do it when you're not in the room, and you have something that you can really build on. So I want to give you another example. This was at our disciplinary alternative education program called Wiley, and they really took this to heart. So part of what they did, they redid their guidelines for success, which they called ROAR, and realized, kids are at the DAEP. They're there for 30 days or 45 days. Like, do we really need to have some kind of school identity? And they believed that they did. So while the kids were with them, they were Wildcats, and Wildcats roar: responsible, optimistic, attentive, and respectful. They taught those to the students. They hung reminders about that 3-to-1 ratio all over the school. This was a paraprofessional you see up here on the upper left, wonderful person. And she decided to start handing out positive acknowledgments. So she made up these little roar positive referrals and just started handing them out to students and staff who she saw were being positive. And I can tell you that this campus went from having one of the highest teacher turnovers in the district to 2 years running, they had virtually no turnover. They had the highest teacher retention in the district. So this doesn't just matter for students, it really matters for teachers too. And I just love this example from one of the toughest environments that you might want to be in, of really using this ratio of interactions to improve it. All right, we are now going to go to our last thing. I've got 2 more interventions here, but we're really going to run out of time. These are in the PowerPoint, so I'm going to direct them to you. You can take a look at this. There are a couple of ways to just build up your positive interventions. One is greet at the door. We all know it, right? It's kind of like one of those things, again, that we know, but it is actually, especially for secondary teachers, it can be really challenging. But greeting at the door, just that one change, 20% increase in engagement. That's what the research is showing. So figure out a system that your teachers can get to the door and greet their students. Every student, every name, it makes such a difference. So that is an intervention that will work. And then here is one more. Maybe some of you have heard of the miraculous 2x10 intervention. This is a tier 3 intervention that's individualized for a student. If you have a really, really tough student that's disrupting your classroom, I encourage you to give this a try. We saw some pretty miraculous results with this intervention, and that is to just weigh up that ratio of interactions by providing 2 minutes of undivided attention a day to that student, in which you do not talk about behavior, you do not talk about school expectations, you talk about whatever that student wants to talk about, and try to get to know them as a person and build that connection, and see where you are with that student after 10 days. Yeah, it's called a lot of different things, but you can Google it, and I just put here a really nice description of it at truthforteachers.com. So I encourage you to try this with your most challenging students. And here's something that I will say to you, that no matter what intervention plan you put in place, either for a campus, for a teacher, for your students, if you don't have the ratio of interactions right behind that intervention, underneath that intervention, it is very unlikely that your intervention will be successful. No matter what you're trying to do with a student, if they still get more attention for doing what's negative than doing what's positive, you're going to have a hard time shaping that behavior. So take this seriously. It's an important part of any behavior improvement plan that you might be doing. If you're working with your staff at your school and you want them to be more positive, then take a look at your own ratio of interactions and how you're interacting with your teachers, and making sure that you are recognizing and acknowledging your teachers and providing a lot of positive feedback for them as well. Whoa, that felt a little bit like a soapbox. So I'll step down off my soapbox now. We've just got a couple of minutes left. So I'm going to finish out by talking about school connectedness. This really is the heart of the work. Somebody said earlier, what is school climate? Boy, it's the quality of those relationships that have been built into your school. And so I'm going to share with you a few things that you might want to be considering, including data sources. So I'm going to ask you right here, what percentage of your students would agree with these statements if you asked them? I'm glad to come to school most of the time. I believe that the work I do here is important. I'm proud to be a part of this school. And here's the critical one. I can name at least one adult at this school who knows me well. If you are not able to tell, if you don't know how your students would answer those questions, you have to ask them. There's no way you can know this without asking your students. So I'm going to encourage you that the next piece of data you think about is taking a school survey. And here, wow, this just really hits me right in my heart, which is by high school, 40 to 60% of all students are chronically disengaged from school. Boy, this just has a direct impact on their life outcomes. So we need to take this really seriously. So here is a tool for you that you can use. This is a school climate survey, freely available. This is the same organization that puts out the tiered fidelity inventory. They also have a platform where you can collect all of this information. My school district actually didn't use these surveys, except we used the questions. I got permission from them to use the questions in a Google form format for a specific campus for their needs. We used a Safe and Civil Schools tool for surveying school climate. Doesn't really matter. I wanted to provide this to you, though, as a free resource if you were looking for a way to get started in this work. And then you can take that data and you can do something with it. So again, this is real data. This is 2,000 elementary students, 2,000 secondary students. And I just want you to take a look at that data for a moment. And what do you notice here? The blue bar is elementary students and the orange bar is secondary students. What do you notice? Anybody want to type in? What do you see? What a sad drop in secondary. Yeah, that's right. And so something to consider, something we considered is why the huge drop off in our secondary grades and what can we do about it? And so there are some things that you can do about it. This is a wonderful video about making sure that every child is known. It's a poster activity and we don't have time to watch through the whole video, but I've included it for you. It will warm your heart. If I had just 10 more minutes, I would show it to you, but I know that we're on the clock. So it's going to show, but I'm going to move right past it. This is the activity. You can ask students, but that data is anonymous, right? That's going to go in as survey data. There is another way you can look at this from the back end, and that is to put up a roster of every single one of your students and have your teachers walk around and say, who do they know? And then you'll be able to identify which specific students need more support. So if you're wondering about what that might look like, take a look at that video link and you'll see an example of it. I've included it again in the PowerPoint so that you can see that. And that way you can target some individualized or targeted interventions for that. I want to share with you a final example of this. This was our Credit Recovery High School. They took this to heart so seriously. And think about what's a harder population to connect with than kids who are in credit recovery. Many of these students are parents. They've had a lot of school failure. They have a lot of circumstances in life that make it challenging. And so this campus just went after it. I even put a link to their Facebook page so that you could see all of the different things they did to build school connectedness. They started by having a store for meeting basic needs. So when they were acknowledging any kind of positive behavior, you showed up today, that's fantastic. You got a credit today, that's fantastic. Those kids are not interested as much in candy and treats, although they like those too, don't get me wrong. But this was basic needs: soap, diapers, tampons, all of those kinds of things. That's what they supplied in their store. And the students absolutely loved it. This is also a picture of the students taking their children around to trick or treat with the different teachers. Leadership clubs. This is Polished Crowns, which is their girls' leadership club, and they had a boys' leadership club as well. You'll see there, that's the police chief of Waco, who is wonderful and so involved in our schools, meeting with those girls and helping them feel connected and that they are a part of things. They also started a ritual where every student who graduates from high school has a knighting ritual, and then they get to identify teachers who help them along their journey. And you can just see the smile on the teacher. That's what I love. And what a difference. And they post every one of these to Facebook. So their Facebook feed is now really, really active. And then they finally, last year, for the very first time, decided to have a dedicated graduation ceremony. And I'm going to finish with this story. And it just gives me goosebumps because they just kind of wondered, I mean, are they going to come? Are their families going to come? In our district, our families love their kids, but we don't have very active parent-teacher associations or things like that in Waco. Some schools do, some schools don't. But this idea of having a dedicated graduation ceremony for these credit recovery kids, there were about 40 of them for the year. And the school district supported it, went along with it. They got the pack open and ready for them. And let me tell you, it was standing room only. I did cry. I see Larissa. I did cry. I'm telling you that every single person these kids knew that had supported them, their own children, their moms, their dads, their aunties, their uncles, their coaches, anybody who had known these kids came together. And, they make that announcement at the beginning that you need to be polite with your cheering and clapping and so forth so that we can get through it. None of that was acknowledged at all. There was so much screaming and cheering. I have never been at another graduation ceremony like it. What a powerful testimony to the importance of building a school identity and building school connections with your students. So I hope that this was inspiring for you. I hope you're taking away some real tools and things that you can use. Remember that the most important thing in building your school climate and in affecting student behavior is attention and connection. That is what it is all about.